Ravi lived a quiet life in a small neighborhood. He liked simple routines. Every morning he would water the plants in his little garden, wash his car, and drink tea on the porch. His driveway was old but still strong. The concrete had a few cracks here and there, which he often planned to repair but never really got the time for. One Saturday morning, after heavy rain during the night, Ravi noticed something unusual. As he walked across the driveway, his foot tapped against a hollow sound. It surprised him. Normally the driveway felt solid, but this time it gave a strange echo, as if something empty was underneath. He stopped and bent down, tapping again with his hand. The same hollow sound came back. Curiosity filled his mind. He moved closer and saw a small line running across the concrete, almost hidden by dirt. It was shaped in a square about the size of a door. The line was not like the normal cracks in concrete. It looked too straight, too neat. Ravi brushed away the dirt with his hand. To his shock, a metal edge appeared. It was not just a crack. It was a hidden hatch. Ravi stared at it in disbelief. A hatch under his driveway was something he had never even imagined. He checked all around it. The metal frame was old and rusty, almost the same color as the driveway, which explained why he had never noticed it before. Right in the center of the hatch was a small round handle, lying flat against the surface. He touched the handle with his fingers. It was cold and stiff. For a moment he thought about pulling it, but then he stopped. What if it was dangerous? What if it had been sealed for a reason? His heart started to beat faster. He stood up and looked around. The street was quiet. Neighbors were still indoors, and no one seemed to notice his discovery. Ravi felt both excited and nervous. He tried to think logically. Why would there be a hatch under a driveway? Was it part of some old construction? Was it maybe an access to water pipes or electricity lines, but it looked too large for that. The sound of the hollow space below still echoed in his ears. That meant there was an empty room or tunnel under his driveway. The thought made his skin prickle. His first instinct was to call someone, maybe a neighbor or even the local office, but his curiosity was stronger. He decided to try opening it, at least just a little, to see what was inside. He bent down again and pulled at the handle. At first it did not move. The metal had rusted badly over the years. He pulled harder, and with a loud creak, the hatch lifted a few inches. A smell of damp air escaped from below, as if the space had been closed for many years. Ravi hesitated again. The smell was not strong, but it was old and heavy. He lifted the hatch further, and soon it was open wide enough to reveal darkness. A square opening leading straight down appeared in front of him. Inside there was only blackness. He could not see anything, not even the bottom. His hands shook slightly as he held the hatch open. He felt like he had discovered something important, but also something he was not supposed to find. The silence around him grew heavier. The morning sun shone on the driveway, but the opening looked like a doorway into another world. He leaned closer and tried to listen. For a moment he thought he heard a faint drip of water echoing from far below. The sound made the space feel even deeper. He looked again, but the blackness swallowed everything. Ravi's mind raced. Should he climb down? Should he close it again and forget he ever saw it? Should he tell someone right now? His curiosity fought with his fear. His common sense told him it might not be safe. He stood back, letting the hatch rest halfway open. His heart was still racing. The discovery felt unreal, like something from a story, not real life. Yet here it was, right under his driveway. As he stood there, unsure of what to do next, one thing became clear. This hatch had been hidden for many years, and now he was the one who had uncovered it. He did not know why it was there or what it led to, but the mystery had only just begun, and deep inside, he knew his life was about to change. Ravi could not stop thinking about the hatch. Even though he had closed it again, the image of the dark opening stayed in his mind. He tried to distract himself by watering the plants and cleaning the porch, but his eyes kept drifting back to the driveway. Every time he looked, he imagined the hollow echo, the rusty handle, and the smell of damp air rising from below. He told himself that maybe it was just an old storage space built long ago. Perhaps the previous owner of the house had used it for tools or supplies. But then another thought came. If it was only storage, why was it hidden so carefully under the concrete? Why was it sealed so tightly that he had never noticed it before? By afternoon, Ravi could no longer ignore his curiosity. He went back to the driveway and stood above the hatch. The square outline looked even clearer now after he had brushed off the dirt. The handle waited for him silently as if it wanted him to return. Ravi took a deep breath and bent down. He pulled again, and with another creak, the hatch slowly opened. The same heavy air escaped from below, and once again the darkness stretched out beneath him. He held the hatch open and peered inside. This time he came prepared with a flashlight from his garage. He clicked it on and pointed the beam down. The light cut through the blackness and revealed a narrow ladder made of iron leading straight down. The ladder was fixed to the wall of what looked like a shaft. The light followed the ladder, but the bottom was still too far away to see clearly. Ravi's mouth went dry. The ladder looked old but strong. The walls of the shaft were lined with bricks, damp and dark from years of being sealed. This was no simple storage space. It was something built with care, hidden away under his driveway. For a long time he stood frozen, staring into the shaft. He thought about climbing down just a few steps to see where it led. But then his fear stopped him. What if the ladder broke? What if there was no air below? What if he got trapped? He quickly shut the hatch again and stepped back. His hands were trembling. His heart told him one thing, but his mind told him another. He needed answers, but he also needed to stay safe. As the sun began to set, Ravi sat on his porch, drinking tea slowly and staring at the driveway. The world around him looked normal. Cars passed by, children played on bicycles, and neighbors watered their plants. No one had any idea that right beneath his driveway was a secret hidden space. Night fell, but sleep did not come easily. Ravi kept turning on his bed, listening to every small sound in the house. His thoughts kept going back to the hatch. Why was it there? Who built it? What was at the bottom of that ladder? At last, he decided that in the morning he would call someone, maybe the local office or even the police. He could not explore it alone, but he also could not ignore it. He needed others to see what he had found. When morning came, Ravi's nerves were still restless. He went outside again and opened the hatch one more time. He shone the flashlight down and listened. The faint drip of water echoed again from somewhere below, but this time he also thought he heard a faint metallic sound, almost like something shifting deep in the dark. He froze. His heart began to race. The sound could have been his imagination, or maybe just a piece of water hitting metal, but it was enough to send a chill down his back. He quickly closed the hatch and stepped away. At that moment, he made up his mind. This was no simple mystery for one man. He had to report it. His curiosity had reached its limit, and now his fear was stronger. The thought of going down alone was impossible. He took out his phone, his hand shaking slightly. He stared at the screen for a while, unsure if he was overreacting. Finally, he decided. He would call for help. If this hatch had been hidden for so long, there was a reason. And now that it was open, he could not ignore it anymore. Ravi pressed the number slowly, preparing to explain everything he had seen. Little did he know, the real mystery was only just beginning. Ravi's fingers shook as he held the phone. He had never called the police for anything before. His life was always quiet and normal, but now he was about to report something strange that even he did not fully understand. He took a deep breath and dialed the emergency number. When the operator answered, Ravi explained slowly. He said he had found a hidden hatch under his driveway, that it led to some kind of underground space and that he was too afraid to go down. His voice was steady, but inside his chest his heart was racing. The operator asked him questions. Was there danger? Did he see smoke, wires, or anything unsafe? Ravi answered honestly. He said he only saw a ladder, old bricks, and darkness. The operator paused for a moment and then told him that a patrol car would be sent to check it. Ravi thanked her and ended the call. Now he had to wait. The minutes felt longer than usual. He sat on his porch watching the street, waiting for the sound of sirens or the sight of flashing lights. He felt uneasy. What if the police thought he was wasting their time? What if they laughed at his story, but deep down he knew he had done the right thing? Soon, a police car rolled into the street. 2 officers stepped out, both looking calm and professional. Ravi stood up quickly and waved to them. He explained everything again, showing them the hatch. The officers bent down to inspect it. One of them knocked on the metal frame, listening to the hollow sound beneath. They exchanged glances. Clearly, they found it unusual. Ravi handed them his flashlight, and one officer opened the hatch while the other leaned over to shine the light inside. The beam revealed the iron ladder again, the damp bricks, and the endless blackness below. The officer's face grew serious. "This is not normal," he said quietly. The other officer nodded. They called for backup on their radio. Ravi listened, feeling both relieved and nervous. At least they believed him. He was not imagining things. While waiting for more help, one of the officers asked Ravi questions about the house. How long had he lived there? Had he ever seen signs of underground work before? Did he know anything about the history of the property? Ravi shook his head. He had lived there for 7 years and everything had always been normal. The house had belonged to an old couple before him, but they never mentioned anything like this. Soon another police car arrived. This time, they brought equipment including ropes, helmets, and stronger lights. Ravi stood back as they prepared. He could see that even they were cautious. Whatever was down there, it was not something ordinary. One officer carefully went down the ladder holding a rope tied around his waist while shining a powerful light. The others waited above, holding the rope steady. Ravi held his breath as he watched the officer disappear into the darkness. Seconds passed like hours. The sound of boots on the iron rungs echoed faintly until it faded. Finally, the officer's voice came from below. It was muffled but clear enough. He said the space was larger than expected. There was a tunnel leading away from the shaft. The air was damp but breathable. He told them to send another light down. Ravi's mind spun with questions. A tunnel. What kind of tunnel? Who built it and why? The officers above helped lower another light. Then they spoke quietly among themselves, deciding how far to explore. Ravi could only stand by, waiting, his palms sweating. He wanted answers, but at the same time he feared what those answers might be. After some minutes, the officer climbed back up. His face was serious. He explained that there was indeed a long tunnel under the ground, stretching further than his light could reach. The bricks were old and the construction looked deliberate, not random. It was clear that someone had built it many years ago and then sealed it away. Ravi felt a chill. This was not just a strange hole. This was something planned, something hidden. The officers told him they needed to inform higher authorities. A team would come to inspect further, possibly with special equipment. For now, they asked Ravi to keep the hatch closed and not to go near it until the investigation continued. Ravi nodded quickly. He had no desire to climb down there himself. He watched as the officers packed up their gear, made notes, and finally left, promising to return soon with more help. As the police cars drove away, Ravi stood alone once again in front of the hatch. The driveway looked the same as before, but now he knew what lay beneath. A tunnel under his home, hidden for who knew how long. That night, Ravi sat in his living room with the lights on. Sleep felt far away. His mind replayed every detail, the hollow sound, the ladder, the tunnel. The mystery was deepening, and though the police were now involved, Ravi knew the discovery had only just opened the door to something far greater. Ravi woke up early the next morning, though he had barely slept. His mind was heavy with thoughts of the hatch. He had called the police and they had confirmed what he saw. It was not his imagination. A tunnel truly stretched beneath his driveway, built by unknown hands long ago. The street outside looked the same as always. Birds sang in the trees, neighbors carried on with their normal routines, and children left for school. Only Ravi carried the secret of what was hidden below. He felt restless, waiting for the officers to return as they promised. By mid-morning, 2 police cars and a large van arrived. This time, more people stepped out. Some wore uniforms while others carried boxes of equipment. They greeted Ravi politely and went straight to the hatch. Ravi followed, standing a little behind, curious but nervous. The hatch was opened once again and fresh lights were lowered into the shaft. The tunnel below came into view more clearly this time. The officers spoke in low voices, planning their next step. Finally, 2 of them strapped on helmets with lamps and tied safety ropes to their belts. They carefully climbed down the ladder while the others watched from above. Ravi leaned over, trying to see as much as he could. The beams of the lamps danced across the brick walls and the floor below. He could see that the bottom opened into a narrow corridor. The 2 officers walked slowly into the tunnel, their lights glowing like stars in the dark. Minutes passed. Their voices echoed up faintly as they described what they saw. The tunnel stretched in both directions. The walls were built from old bricks, damp but strong. Strange markings were scratched on some of the surfaces, though the officers could not understand them. The air was heavy, yet not too difficult to breathe. Ravi's heart pounded as he listened. He could almost picture it in his mind, a hidden passage running under his neighborhood waiting silently for years. What was it made for? Was it connected to something larger? The officers explored further, their voices fading as they moved deeper. Ravi waited tensely with the others. At last, the sound of footsteps returned. The two officers climbed back up the ladder, their faces serious but calm. They reported what they had found. The tunnel stretched much farther than expected, disappearing into darkness. It was not just a small chamber but a passage that could lead anywhere. They also mentioned that the ground was uneven in places, with stones and broken wood scattered around. The group above listened carefully. One of the senior officers explained to Ravi that they needed to block off the area for safety. The tunnel was too large and too uncertain. It could be part of an old structure, maybe even connected to older buildings or hidden pathways from the past. They would have to bring in specialists to map it. Ravi nodded, though his chest tightened. His simple driveway had become the center of an investigation. He had wanted answers, but now the mystery only grew deeper. By afternoon, red tape was placed around the driveway, and equipment was left nearby. Ravi was told he could not use that part of his property for now. The officers promised to return with a team of experts who could study the tunnel more closely. When the vehicles left again, Ravi stood alone outside his house. He looked at the hatch, now sealed shut once more. He felt a strange mix of pride and fear. He had discovered something that mattered, something important enough for authorities to study. Yet the unknown stretched below, and he could not stop thinking about it. That evening, Ravi's neighbor Mira came by. She had noticed the police cars and the equipment. With a worried look, she asked what had happened. Ravi hesitated for a moment, but then explained. He told her about the hollow sound, the hatch, and the tunnel below. Her eyes widened in disbelief. "A tunnel under your house," she whispered. "That is frightening," Ravi agreed. Mira shook her head and said she had lived in the neighborhood since childhood. She had never heard any story about tunnels or hidden spaces. That only made the discovery stranger. As night fell again, Ravi sat by his window, looking out at the taped-off driveway. The mystery kept pressing on his thoughts. The tunnel was real, but its purpose was still hidden. Who had built it? Why had it been sealed so carefully? Why was it forgotten? The darkness outside seemed to whisper these questions back to him. Ravi felt that the answers were waiting deep below, in the silent brick passage under his driveway. He just did not know if he was ready to face them yet. The next morning, Ravi woke to the sound of vehicles outside. He stepped onto his porch and saw a larger group arriving. This time it was not only police officers. There were also people in plain clothes carrying bags, boxes, and cameras. Their movements were careful and professional, and Ravi understood at once that these were experts sent to study the tunnel. One officer greeted him politely and explained. They were a team of engineers and surveyors. Their task was to examine the underground space, measure it, and make sure it was safe. They might also try to learn why it had been built. Ravi nodded and stood aside, giving them space. The hatch was opened again and stronger lamps were lowered inside. The shaft glowed brightly, revealing the iron ladder and the damp bricks more clearly than before. Ropes and safety gear were arranged. One by one, the experts prepared to climb down. Ravi watched as they disappeared into the darkness, their voices echoing faintly as they spoke to each other. He could not see much, but he could hear pieces of their conversation. They described the tunnel walls, the brickwork, and the smell of damp earth. One of them mentioned that the construction was old, possibly many decades, maybe even more. Another said the tunnel seemed to be built with purpose, not just a random hole. Above ground, Ravi stood near the officers, waiting. His curiosity was growing stronger with every minute. He wished he could see for himself, but the thought of going down still made him uneasy. The ladder seemed to lead not only into the earth but into mystery itself. After a while, one of the experts came back up. He removed his helmet and wiped his forehead. He reported that the tunnel stretched very far in one direction, almost like a passageway leading somewhere. They had walked some distance, but it still continued. On the walls, they found signs of wear, scratches, and what looked like faded symbols. They could not read them, but they were clearly man-made. This news made Ravi's skin prickle. Symbols on the walls meant the tunnel had been used, maybe even for something secret. He wondered who had walked there before and for what reason. The team decided to take more equipment inside. They carried cameras, measuring tools, and stronger lamps. For hours they worked below while Ravi waited above with growing tension. From time to time he saw their lights flickering far down the shaft, glowing like stars in a cave. When they finally returned to the surface, their faces were filled with both excitement and seriousness. One of the engineers told the officers that this was not a simple tunnel. It looked like part of a larger system. The walls were built with care, and the passage seemed to have branches leading in different directions. They needed more time to explore fully. The officers discussed quietly among themselves. Ravi could hear only bits, but he caught words like sealed on purpose and too deep to ignore. The atmosphere grew heavier, as if everyone understood that this was no ordinary discovery. That evening, when most of the team had left, an officer spoke privately to Ravi. He thanked him for reporting the hatch and said it might turn into a major investigation. Ravi asked what they thought the tunnel was. The officer only shook his head. It is too early to say, but it was hidden for a reason. Ravi sat in silence after the officer left. His driveway was no longer just concrete. It was the doorway to something that reached deep into the past. Later that night, Ravi stood by the window again, staring at the taped-off hatch. The neighborhood was calm, lights glowing softly in the houses, dogs barking in the distance. But he knew that beneath the surface the tunnel stretched on, waiting. A strange feeling grew inside him. He had left the work to the experts, yet part of him wanted to know more. He wanted to step down the ladder himself, to walk the hidden path, to see the symbols with his own eyes. Fear still held him back, but curiosity whispered louder each time he thought of the dark passage. The experts would return tomorrow. They would map more of the tunnel and perhaps find where it led. Ravi promised himself he would stay above ground, safe in his home. But in his heart he knew the mystery was pulling him closer. He could not escape the feeling that the tunnel under his driveway was calling to him. The following morning, Ravi heard the sound of heavy wheels outside his house. He looked through his window and saw another large van, this time carrying more equipment. The experts had returned, but they looked more prepared than before. Along with them came new faces, people holding notebooks, scanners, and other tools Ravi did not recognize. Ravi stepped out of his house. One of the officers greeted him and explained that the investigation had been approved to go deeper. The team wanted to map the tunnel properly and follow it to see where it led. Ravi nodded silently, both curious and nervous. The hatch was opened again, and this time, powerful lights were lowered into the shaft, bright enough to push the shadows away. The tunnel looked clearer than ever. The old bricks were damp, shining under the light. The iron ladder still looked strong, though rusty. One by one, the experts climbed down. Ravi stood near the edge, watching carefully. He could see them step onto the tunnel floor, their helmets glowing like moving stars. Soon they began walking, carrying cameras and tools. An officer stayed beside Ravi and told him not to worry. They would send back detailed reports of what they found. Ravi tried to relax, but his chest felt tight. The thought of people walking far below his driveway in a space no one had seen for decades was both exciting and frightening. For a long time, Ravi waited above. The experts' voices echoed faintly through radios, carried by the officers on the surface. Ravi could hear them describe the tunnel. They said it stretched far in one direction and seemed to split into two paths. One path sloped downward while the other remained straight. The team decided to follow the straight path first. They reported that the air grew cooler as they moved forward. The brick wall showed signs of age with cracks and scratches. On some parts of the wall they found faded markings again. None of the team could understand the markings, but everyone agreed they were not natural. Ravi listened closely, his curiosity growing with every word. He wanted to see the symbols for himself. His imagination painted pictures of secret messages, old maps, or forgotten codes. After some time, one of the experts' voices became more excited. He said they had found a wooden door deep in the tunnel. Ravi's eyes widened in shock when he heard that. A door underground. How long had it been there and what was on the other side? The team examined it carefully. They reported that the wood was old but surprisingly solid. Rusty hinges held it in place and there was no visible lock. They pushed it gently, but it did not move. It seemed to be sealed from the other side. Ravi's heartbeat quickened as he listened. A sealed wooden door hidden deep in a tunnel under his driveway made the mystery even larger. The team decided not to force it open right away. They wanted to finish mapping the area first and then discuss the safest way to handle the door. The team returned to the surface after hours of work. Their clothes were dusty and their faces were serious. One of the experts explained what they had found to the officers, and Ravi listened carefully. The tunnel stretched very far, with branches leading in different directions. They had chosen to explore only one side for now, but the sealed wooden door was the most important discovery. The officers took notes and spoke in low voices. They told Ravi the investigation would continue over the coming days. They needed to bring tools strong enough to open the door safely. They also wanted to study the markings on the walls more closely. When everyone left for the day, Ravi stood alone again by the taped-off hatch. He felt both proud and unsettled. A hidden tunnel, strange markings, and now a door sealed long ago. The questions in his mind grew louder. Who built all this? Why was it hidden? What was behind the door that night? Ravi could not rest. The image of the sealed wooden door haunted him. He imagined it standing in the dark, waiting silently, holding secrets no one yet knew. He felt the mystery pulling him stronger than ever. He told himself he would not go down, but deep inside he was no longer sure. The next morning, Ravi heard the sound of trucks outside. The experts had returned with new equipment, this time heavier tools and bright lamps. He stepped out of his house, his heart beating faster than usual. Today, they planned to reach the sealed wooden door deep in the tunnel. Ravi watched as the team prepared. Ropes were tied, helmets checked, and flashlights tested. Officers stood by, ensuring everything remained safe. The hatch was opened once again, and the powerful lights illuminated the ladder and shaft. Ravi felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. One by one, the experts climbed down carefully. Ravi stood near the edge, watching the glowing helmets disappear into the darkness. He could faintly hear their voices through radios. The tunnel walls looked familiar from the previous days, but the team seemed more focused this time. They were moving toward the wooden door. Minutes passed, but they seemed much longer to Ravi. He tried to imagine what could be behind the door. A secret room, a storage area from the past, or something even stranger. His mind raced with possibilities, but none of them prepared him for what they might find. Finally, one of the team leaders spoke through the radio. The door was ahead, and it was exactly as they had described before, old, solid, and sealed from the other side. The team inspected it carefully. They shone their lights over every inch, looking at the wood, the hinges, and the markings nearby. The symbols on the wall seemed more visible under the lamps. They looked like letters or signs, but faded with age. The experts decided to open the door slowly and safely. They used special tools to loosen the hinges, working quietly and carefully. Ravi felt his chest tighten. He could see the faint outlines of the door through the hatch and felt a strange thrill. At last, the hinges gave way with a soft creak. The door swung open slowly, revealing a small chamber inside. Ravi's eyes widened when he heard the team describe what they saw. The room was empty, but the walls were lined with old shelves. On the shelves were boxes and jars covered with dust. Everything looked untouched for decades. The team carefully stepped inside, taking photos and examining the contents. They reported that the objects seemed old, possibly from another era. Some jars contained small objects, while the boxes held papers and documents. The walls of the chamber were solid and the ceiling low, giving the feeling of a hidden storage space built in secrecy. Ravi listened closely, fascinated. The room was hidden under his driveway, yet it had been well made and organized. Whoever had built it had wanted it to stay secret. But why and why now had it been discovered? The experts continued to document everything. They noted the symbols on the walls near the door and said they might be instructions or labels. None of the team could read them, but it was clear that the builders had a purpose. The chamber was not random. It had been used and protected carefully. As the team explored, they found an old notebook tucked in one corner. The pages were yellowed with age and the writing was faded. One of the experts carefully opened it and scanned the first page. Ravi leaned in as much as he could, his curiosity almost unbearable. The notebook contained lists and names, measurements, and simple drawings. It seemed to belong to someone who had used this hidden chamber regularly. The writing suggested careful planning, almost like instructions for keeping something safe. Ravi wondered who had written it and why they had gone to so much effort to hide it. After hours of careful study, the team decided to seal the door again for safety, while continuing to catalog the contents of the chamber. They promised Ravi that the investigation would continue and that more experts would come to study the objects and symbols. When the hatch was closed and the equipment packed away, Ravi stood alone again. The mystery was still alive, but now he had more answers than before. He had seen the hidden chamber, the shelves, the boxes, and the notebook. Yet he knew there were still secrets waiting to be uncovered in the tunnel and its symbols. Ravi felt a mixture of relief and wonder. He had uncovered something extraordinary, hidden beneath his home for decades. But he also realized that the story of the tunnel and its hidden chamber was far from finished. He went inside his house that night, thinking about the people who had built this secret space. He imagined their careful work, their desire to keep something safe, and the reason it had been hidden so long. The mystery under his driveway had begun as a simple discovery, but now it had become a story that connected the past and the present in ways he could hardly imagine. Ravi knew one thing for certain. He would never forget what lay beneath his driveway, and he would never stop wondering what other secrets the hidden tunnel might hold. The following morning, Ravi woke with a mix of excitement and anxiety. The experts were returning again, and today they promised to reveal more about the hidden chamber and the tunnel. His neighbors had noticed the activity but had no idea what was going on. Ravi felt like he was standing at the center of a secret the world did not yet know. When he stepped outside, he saw a larger team than ever before. Along with engineers and officers, there were historians and document specialists. They carried tools, scanners, and boxes to transport delicate objects safely. Ravi knew this was serious work. The investigation had moved far beyond a simple discovery. The hatch was opened and strong lights illuminated the ladder and the shaft below. Ravi watched silently as the team descended one by one into the darkness. This time, they went directly toward the wooden door and the hidden chamber. Ravi's heart raced as he imagined what secrets the experts might find. Minutes passed, but Ravi could hear the faint voices through the radios. They described the chamber again and the objects inside. One of the historians spoke with excitement. The notebook and papers had been carefully examined. The documents contained records of supplies, measurements, and even plans of nearby buildings from decades ago. It appeared that the chamber had been used as a safe storage place for important items. The team also discovered more symbols on the walls, faint but still visible. The historian studied them carefully and concluded that the markings were simple codes used to organize the items in the chamber. They were not magical or mysterious, but practical. The people who had built this space had wanted to make sure everything could be found easily by anyone who knew the code. Ravi listened to the reports and felt a sense of relief. The tunnel and the chamber were not dangerous, and there was nothing frightening hidden below.
Yet the story of the chamber revealed something remarkable.
It had belonged to a group of people who had lived long ago in the neighborhood. They had used the tunnel and chamber to protect important tools, documents, and supplies during times when it was necessary to hide them. The historians explained that it was likely built many decades ago, possibly during a time when the area faced challenges that required hidden storage. The chamber had been carefully sealed to keep the items safe, and over time everyone had forgotten about it. The hatch had been covered and blended into the driveway so perfectly that no one had noticed it, until Ravi discovered it. The experts carefully packed some of the documents and objects to be studied further. They took photographs, measured everything, and labeled it for preservation. Ravi realized that what he had found was like a small piece of history hidden beneath his home, a connection to the people who had lived there long before him. When the team returned to the surface, Ravi thanked them quietly. He felt proud and amazed. He had uncovered something extraordinary, something that belonged not just to his house but to the history of the neighborhood. The tunnel and the chamber were no longer just a mystery. They were a story waiting to be told. The officers promised Ravi that the site would remain safe and the experts would continue studying it. They assured him that the tunnel was not dangerous and the hidden chamber had been preserved perfectly. Ravi felt a weight lift from his shoulders. The fear he had felt when first discovering the hatch was gone, replaced by awe and respect for the people who had built it. That evening, Ravi sat on his porch, looking at his driveway. It seemed ordinary again, but he knew the truth. Beneath the concrete lay a hidden passage, a tunnel that had protected history for decades now brought to light. He smiled quietly, realizing that a simple discovery had changed his life. Ravi understood that mysteries were not always frightening. Some mysteries were treasures of the past, waiting for the right person to uncover them. He felt lucky that he had been the one to find the hatch, the tunnel, and the hidden chamber. The story had started with curiosity and fear, but it ended with knowledge, wonder, and a deep connection to the history beneath his feet. Ravi went inside, feeling calm. He knew that the tunnel and chamber would continue to be studied, and someday others would learn the story of the people who built it. For now he could rest, knowing he had discovered something extraordinary and preserved it for the future. The hatch remained closed that night, but it was no longer just a piece of concrete. It was a doorway to history, a secret revealed and a reminder that sometimes the smallest discoveries could lead to the greatest adventures.